Well, welcome. I am Donato Giancola. I've been a freelance illustrator for 20 plus years now, working mostly in the book cover and gaming industry. Today, I'm going to talk a bit about some of the career moves that have helped advance my career artistically over the years. And hopefully some of this advice might help you as artists, if you are artists, to help advance your own careers without having to go through as much stumbling in a way that I did earlier in my career. The other thing is I'm going to try to monitor the chat, but follow the chat. Depending on how active it is, I might miss a question. So Jamie, my co-host here and kind of tech person, is going to do a little shout out in case I miss something. And we'll jump right in. Another thing is I live in Brooklyn, New York City. My studio space here is right next to a street, so you might hear sirens periodically. So it could be a little slightly disruptive for a few seconds, but we'll just keep. I won't even hear them. Maybe you will, but welcome. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to jump in. This is my kind of computer office you're seeing behind me. My regular painting studio is in another room, and I was just literally painting just before I started the presentation here, and I'm going to go back to that after we're done. And another structure to this is I'm going to have a visual presentation, which should take about 45 minutes, and then I'm going to open up to questions and answers at the end. But also feel free to fire off questions as I'm talking. I love going on tangents, and also I'm here for you all to answer your questions, to help explain some of the choices I made, go in depth if you wish on some of these issues. So feel free again to fire that off. And without further ado, we'll just jump now into the commercial and personal kind of conjoining of commissions and projects. So when I look back, I make sure just a confirmation that we are good. Jamie, we got a good.
Yep. Yeah, we have a lot of people coming in.
Okay, all right. Well, welcome those of you coming in. We're just jumping right in, right on time here. I tend not to delay too much because we only have an hour. But when I look at art history, when I look at around me at some of the great works that have been created by artists, both contemporary, Mobius here, who's just recently passed, going back deeper into the world of the Renaissance. When I look at some of these incredible works of art, and I get so inspired by seeing them, I also wonder, as a commercial artist, like what were the motivations behind what each one of these artists undertook to create these images. So for me, again, as a commercial artist, mostly that's what I do. I want to find how I can bring this sensibility, this kind of integrity into what I do, both as an illustrator and as a fine artist, where I might be working on my own personal projects. And again, what's fascinating is that when I look at these works, when I read about them as well, the history of their making, what intrigued me is that many times the artists were self-guided. They were self-motivated. They broke rules. They did things that were not expected for their clients. And it took me years into my career to realize that that's kind of what my clients really wanted of me, was my best work. But my best work really also came from something personal that I was bringing to their commission. So that's where I'm going to kind of take you on a little trip today. I'm going to speak from my point of view. We've got beautiful work here by Jeremy Geddes, an absolutely phenomenal painter and illustrator, and how he obviously these are personal visions of his that have elevated his work far beyond what he was initially as a commercial illustrator. But again, I'm going to speak again to what I know and what I can speak to. I can only guess at what Jeremy had done, what James Gurney had done, Mobius, what motivations they had. So that's where I've got to kind of tap down into. And we're going to take a look at some of my best work, or maybe not best work. This, I've got to share with you all. Let me find, let me make sure I got chat open here. Okay, there we are. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure I've got that following. So this is a painting done for Lord of the Rings. This is Gandalf, if you can believe that. And Frodo and Sam. And look at that awesome Gandalf. You can see the fake Santa Claus beard I purchased to pull. I didn't even do that. Like, I was just making up a beard. I didn't know how to paint beards. But I wanted to show you, because this is me in kind of in the mid beginning of my career. I had great technical skill, but look at this. Look, what is this? Like, this is junk, right? But this is me painting what I thought I loved, and I knew I loved, Lord of the Rings. But what a failure, artistically. And maybe this other great piece out of my portfolio. Also, these are for a Middle Earth trading card game. Here's Frodo with the One Ring, and this one's a little better, but it's not a masterpiece. It's not anything like the Caravaggio's or the Michelangelo's, right? Not even close. So what is it that I was missing, right, in these projects? Part of it is the fee. I mean, these were really low paying jobs, right? So I had to do them fast. That's part of it. But that doesn't also excuse some of why I was making them the way they did, or how they turned out the way they did. So the quality of the work was not conditioned on, in a way, the client, the commission that I was getting, right? Because I mean, it doesn't get any better if you're a fantasy illustrator to work with Lord of the Rings material, right? To get a commission for that. So what is it that I needed to do to elevate from here to get to do this? And this is only about 2 years later that I'm executing this work in comparison to those other. So here, I think I've got Gandalf down here, right? So what is the difference between, it's not so much technical skill, because I actually, I didn't grow technically that much in those 2 years. But yeah, I'll be honest, some of you say like only 2 years. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It's not like I had grown. It was the way I was thinking about the commissions, the way I approached the commissions is what can change, what started to change, transform in my mind. And this happened quite a bit across a lot of paintings that I was executing at the time. So in the beginning of my career, I always thought, technical facility, studying anatomy, rendering things really well, plus commissions from clients would lead to great works of art, right? Because that's what you do. You just bang them out and create great works of art. But no, that's not, and even in book cover illustration. So this is even when I had like 2 weeks of time to create work. So yeah, technically it's well rendered, but you'll never, this is why I have, the reason why I have this as a book cover, because I never photographed this for my portfolio. You'll never see this again. Enjoy, take your screenshots, but this is it. But this is not a gold medal winning portfolio piece that most people probably would want in their portfolio. Well, maybe some people might, if you're doing romance style covers and such, but this is not what I imagined myself being as a fantasy illustrator when I was working. So luckily those things are gone, and I look forward more to interesting paintings, but they weren't, again, I was technically producing pieces, but some were okay. And yet others, like the one on the right, were award winners. The one on the right appeared on the cover of Spectrum. And the one on the left, again, you'll never see it again in my portfolio. So what was the difference? It was like I was just playing dice, gambling each time I undertook a commission to technically, I was executing them almost exactly technically the same way, but some were better and others were failures, in terms of their conceptual structure for my portfolio. So what to do about that? And that's what was great about these ideas of spectrum, is that it allowed me to assess like these early works where I thought, if I read the client's treatise, I read the books, I answered their descriptions, and I gave them a nice work of art, technically executed, that would, make a career for me. And, it did, like these paintings are, again, they're competent, but they're not masterful. They're not things that transcend their book cover use. These answer the questions of commercial illustration, but they don't answer, or they weren't answering for me, the artistic source of integrity or desire that had got me into painting in the first place. So that's what I want to talk about. We're going to look at, when did that transformation happen for me, which was actually in the late 90s. So it's about literally a handful of years into my professional career. And then, some of those choices I made and the transformations that occurred in my portfolio. So again, these were competent paintings, but they weren't like this. And, just to give you a heads up, this painting was created a couple years before these were. So like, again, technical skill, I wasn't better or worse then, right? It was a change in awareness of what to do. Someone's asking, did client input affect these? No, it actually wasn't. Like, I had just as much freedom on this painting and this painting as I did on this robot. Yet, to more price. So it appears someone recognized it. But again, some were great award winners, and I still have this painting, use this painting in my portfolio to this day. So 23 years, not quite, I guess, a little over 25 years now, I guess. I'm trying to figure out the dates here. 28 years. Oh my goodness. Wow. It's been a long time. 28 years ago, I did this painting, and I still use it in my portfolio. Whereas again, those others, you'll never, you hope you got screenshots of them, because you'll never see them pass by with my name on them again. So what was it that happened, or that caused me to change? And it was this idea that the work needed to have some kind of integrity, and integrity that would come from external to my clients' needs, my clients' desires. And I didn't realize that until, again, into the late 90s, when I started looking at the paintings that were successful for me and the ones that were failures. And nearly all the ones that were successful, I started recognizing that they drew from an internal passion that I had, something that motivated me externally about the world, about art making. And as an example here, Iron Man. I'm a huge fan of the comic character. I grew up reading comics. This is a drawing of Iron Man from my childhood in high school. Looking at John Romita Jr. and Bob Layton's renditions in the 80s. The shiny metal, the musculature, the heroism of the characters. But when I started recognizing that these passions were deep inside of me, when I would then tackle a new commission, a science fiction for a spacesuit, I would then turn to those forms. And again, here's Iron Man again in my painting phase in my college years, playing a little with Bill Sienkiewicz, reinterpreting the Iron Man character. But again, as a commercial illustrator, this in a way is Iron Man. Even though it's not, the Iron Man suit, it is executed with the intent of glorifying like the Iron Man idea, a suited space voyaging astronaut, adventurous, seeking, heroic, a worker. So this is done actually for an editorial illustration by a story by Ray Bradbury. So it's like, right. So you see the change, like that, not the change so much, but the embracing of some of the quality of storytelling or character that helps motivate me, you know, as I'm spending hours rendering up this suit, getting the references together. And so that's part of the challenge. Like that flip was what started hitting me in the late 90s. And you'll see it across multiple platforms is when I started engaging with it. Also in the mid 90s was when I started working for Magic the Gathering, and turning those ideas of passion that I talk about here. I have multiple layers of, obviously, you all probably do too, of what you're passionate about. So I love painting hands. So my very first Magic card, I painted hand. I put a hand in it. And that was really mostly because I didn't get to paint hands for book covers. I was mostly a book cover illustrator, and I love drawing hands. I love painting them, but you could never, justify a giant hand on a book cover. Back then in the early 90s, it was mostly portraits and faces. So this is my chance. And so as soon as I got a chance to do Magic, something a little different, they gave me an artifact card, and I go, oh, let me put I've got to put a hand in it because I love painting hands. And that's what I started doing. Like almost every commission I could do for Magic in those early days, I just put as many hands into them as possible. So here's Sisay's Ring. Again, this is one of my, for Visions. So the first one was Mirage. This is Vision. So these are sets back in like 96 when they were released, 97. And I just loved hands. So even to this day now, I love tackling hands, and I love getting these commissions from Wizards of the Coast to execute that. But again, that love of hands is what helped open the door for me, because as soon as Wizards of the Coast saw the quality I was delivering for the cards and the love of hands, they started throwing me literally hand paintings. Like, okay, can you do another one? Here's another artifact. And so that helped cement my relationship with my commercial client being an effective illustrator and a successful illustrator for their product. And so therefore, even to, this is 25 years ago now that I've been working for Wizards of the Coast. And that foundation was laid, not just because I was a good technical illustrator, but because I was passionate about one of those subjects that were dear to me, painting hands, and it merged well with their desires for commercial work. So, all right, there we go. I talk a lot. So feel free, Jamie, if you, I told you I'd talk a lot. If you see any questions that's ripping through, I see a bunch of comments. Thank you for a lot of the comments. So when I guess someone has a question about breaking into the industry in the beginning, my first commissions were acquired through a representative in the book cover industry. So I luckily found a representative who was willing to work with a young new talent like I was. And I actually had generated 6 samples for him before he landed me my first job. So I had to go in, show that the quality I was doing, executing, and this representative, Sal Baraka, had represented and was representing book cover illustrators. And that's how I actually became a book cover illustrator, was that it was the dominant structure of his commissions. And therefore I kind of fell into that as well. So hands. So one of the other passions that I love is portraiture. And portraiture obviously is a great marriage with book cover illustration because it's a lot about character and faces and people. But also I love just like the simplistic structure of portraiture, of going to the Met, seeing Rembrandt, Hans Memling. I remember these painters, seeing them for the first time. And then I take that into when I'm getting some Magic cards, doing just straight up classical portraiture. And this is inspired by like Lorenzo Lotto, like Titian, Tintoretto, all these great portrait painters of the Renaissance and art history. And I'm twisting it just enough to make it fit for Magic. And so this is a really crappy card mechanic in Magic, but it's one of my most successful Magic card paintings. It's sells, the prints sell, the collectors love it. It's a recognizable image from people who've been playing Magic for decades. And again, it's all partly stemmed from that idea to paint a portrait. And this is actually of a real person, Claudia Rodriguez, one of my friends back then who was a painter. And I had her pose, and I just dead on did a 100% kind of portrait of her with obviously some modifications to the background, but that's what it is. It's a portrait of her. And even now, again, like just recently, I just executed this piece for Wizards of the Coast, tapping into my passion over, again, portraiture, full length portraiture, like Jean-Dominique Eng, from the 19th century. Some of those great, again, Renaissance portraiture from like Velázquez, and turn that on to Magic. So that's this is Mordenkainen for those as you see the chat come by, right? So, but this is the way I wanted to paint it. So yeah, Magic was the commission, but it was crappy pay. Let's be honest. Like Wizards of the Coast doesn't pay a whole lot for their commissions. So this portrait, if you do like a portrait like this on a private commission, you're talking like $30,000 to $50,000, but you're not going to get that for a commission. So like, how do you justify the labor? And like, either you justify it through your passion and or the sale of the original. So like, sometimes I mix those up together, but this one just really stemmed from the pure love of Wizards. I played Wizards and Dungeons and Dragons when I was younger. I'm a dungeon master. So I just poured my passion of Dungeons and Dragons into this portrait. And so it's more than just portrait, right? There's the D&D tie-in as well.
Donato, sorry to cut you off, but there are a few questions about models.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, like I think, let's see, yes, these are photographs from models. Those hands are mine. And the face is an amalgam of myself and one of my friends, Michael, who posed for this as well. But I did not have a costume, anything like that. So I did have like a white shirt and a vest and a cloak, but I certainly had to animate everything. And then the entire background is a fabrication of various aspects and elements, glassware and things that I utilized, a sheep skull that I had. So lots of things. Let's see. Well, there's so many chat things. How do you pose? Let's see. Let me just read through here. Do you do any posing and figure exercises in terms of making realistic proportions? Yeah, I guess that's it. Again, examining real people. Nearly everything, as you see here, I'm mentioning is about painting real people, tapping into portraiture live. I just love working with real people, and that's both if I'm doing a fantasy piece, science fiction, historical. It's all about getting real people to tap into that. And question, were there ever times where as much as you tried, you couldn't find a way to fit your personal interests into commission work? A lot of times. Some commercial work just has almost no room for your personal aesthetic. So it's hard. So, and so therefore, like sometimes you can really like overwhelm like this one, like just, even though the character is Mordenkainen, he was pre-existing, they had a character design for him. I could pour my passion into the background. I could pour my passion into what he's doing in his study. So I could really formulate the entire narrative around what was occurring here. So that was like a good, probably more like 3/4 of me and 1/4 of the commission for the guidelines. But other times you're getting like 90% of the guidelines are from your clients. And you'll see one of those later on. And then you've got very little room to kind of push around your own aesthetic. And, sometimes those sometimes fall by the wayside. They're not great paintings because the clients can overly dominate the themes. And here's the digital alteration that was required for Wizards because they wanted his Mordenkainen's Faithful Hound. And I thought the hound actually ruined the illustration. So I just digitally added it. So I wanted the oil painting to remain as a beautiful portrait. So yeah, when you see the final illustration, it's got this digital addition, but I don't have it on the painting because it's, again, that's what my client needs. So I satisfy them, but I'm more interested in the oil painted portrait as an original work. All right. Oh, there's, yeah, someone's asking about thumbnails and rough sketches. How do I work? That's a whole nother 3-hour lecture. Like I just can't get to that. So yeah, it is indeed. There's a systematic process that I execute for that. But let's moving on. I want to get through the lecture here a little bit more. We got a few more slides. So Spectrum, I mentioned, when Spectrum came out in the mid 90s, it was a breath of fresh air. It was before the internet, really, and it was a chance to see the collected works of art on an annual basis of other science fiction and fantasy illustrators. The other thing about Spectrum is that you wanted to be in it as an illustrator. I wanted to be it as an illustrator. And so submitting work to be included means that you assess your work at the end of the year. Like, what am I going to submit to Spectrum? It's a juried show, so not everything gets in. So you try to hope your best pieces get in. And that's what started. What happened was I started assessing what I did as an artist in that year. And it was like, wow, like I did this, I did that, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. Like, it was a wonderful way to reevaluate my own artistic goals on an annual basis. And very quickly, one of the years, what I realized is, yeah, here I'm doing a bunch of book covers, but again, they're technically executed well. There's some of them are really good, some are okay, but they're all like single figures, maybe two figures. I've got one up there with a bunch of bodies dying because I love doing dead things. That's another theme you'll see later on. But mostly they were single figures. And it was like, geez, my portfolio's looking boring. It's like I didn't get into art to make only single figured portraits. So dialing back to that high school student, here's one of my high school illustrations, the attack on Helm's Deep. So I love doing multi-figures. I love doing mass group scenes. Also, at that time, I loved X-Men and comics. So here is a high school pen and ink drawing I did of the Sentinels and the X-Men, kind of going crazy with it. And this is before I even thought of myself as an artist. This is me as a hobbyist. But I tapped back into that love of multi-figured complexity, action, and I constantly revisited this. So here I am in college, tapping into that multi-figured compositional device, the Song of Roland, for a project to do kind of like book cover sampling here. And finally, after some of the assessment of looking at the spectrum for so many, a couple of years entering those same single figure composition, I go, I got to do something different. And so the next book cover project that I undertook, reading through it, there's a battle scene. I go, I'm going to do like crazy number of people. And that's what I did. So I did this like 30 figure, 28 figure plus composition for a book cover illustration. That was up to me. No, the art directors did not require it. I could have done a single figure against a simple background, been happy, but I wanted something different in my portfolio. And I wanted to do something that tapped into that love of action and narration, storytelling, epicness that was missing in my work. And that changed. Like, it changed my relationship with this client. This was for Tor Books. The main publisher, Tom Doherty, saw this and he asked the art director, like, did we require the artist to do all of these figures? I mean, he was shocked that any artist would maybe do this for one of their covers. And it just, again, one of those, like, just like Wizards, this cemented my commercial relationship with the art director, which happened to be Irene Gallo at the time. And boom, I was off running with Irene Gallo doing cover after cover after cover. So it was this kind of thing. And this also opened up other doors. So this battle scene then means that, I'll do another battle scene like this for another publisher, Penguin Books. Again, like doing crazy numbers of figures that because no one else was doing it. And yeah, there's certain aspect, it does take a lot more time, not cutting anything, but I was, subsidizing, if you've worked, like, I've got multiple jobs going for clients. So one job will get the single figure, simple background, and then I'll switch that labor. And like, because this is going to take like 3 weeks or more, whereas maybe the single figure I can do in like 3 or 4 days. So I was doing book covers on a 2-week schedule. So I'd shift around my labor so that I could throw my passion into something like this and therefore develop my portfolio, get it expanded and growing. And that's, each one of these amplified my portfolio, amplified my commissions and my relationship with my clients. So a few years later, I tackle something hyper realistic, very Renaissance-y, really heavy on the portraiture, on the flesh. Of course, soldiers probably would never go bare armed into battle like this, but it looks cool. And I guess it's a great way to paint flesh because I love painting skin tones and all that. And again, this was another one for Tor that reinitiated that relationship. And I still remember the editor of the book after I brought this in to them. And it was too big to fit in the art director's office, Irene's office. So she had it in the foyer in the entryway. And the publisher, the editor, came out, David Hartwell, and he looked at it and he didn't say a single word. He just clapped. And I was like, I've never had anyone clap for a delivery of a commercial commission of mine before. And it was phenomenal. It was better than words. Obviously, then we had a conversation, but again, this is one of those pieces that opened up doors for me. It went into my portfolio. It went into the Society of Illustrators annual competition. I sold the original art. And then it started feeding me commercial work, because once that was in my portfolio, then game design companies were throwing me the multi-figured compositional thing for their video game covers and advertising. And that's where I started working on a bunch of things for like games, for Star Wars Galaxies. This is Age of Empires, and doing stuff like EverQuest as well. So this is one of those examples of like someone asked me about the client, like the client's needs getting in the way. And this is one of those examples where, it's a competent illustration, it's successful, but it doesn't resonate with me as deeply as some of the others because there's so many client requirements that are going into this particular illustration. And yeah, someone asked, are these oil? Yeah, everything you're seeing here is oil painting. I'm not a digital illustrator. I still am not. So everything I execute is in oil paint. But again, but these kind of jobs were like coming at me all the time now because of the multi-figured compositional thing, my love of storytelling. And again, that's one of the reasons why, and I say, tap into some of those personal motivations for your career, because they come back at you. They feed into the success, they feed into your satisfaction, your self-satisfaction and self-worth as an illustrator. And so basically, yeah, this is like kind of like what my clients were wanting. But when I started, again, with Irene Galla, when I wanted to do multi-figured scenes, I kept challenging myself. So this is the dead people thing. You saw that way back on those single figure. There's one of the book covers for science fiction. So I look at medieval, when I'm thinking about medieval warfare, how brutal it must have been. To kill someone with a sword, you've got to literally like be, from me to your computer screen away. You got to breathe their air. And I can't imagine being there, like that kind of personal engagement. It's just nasty. And so when I think about, the heroics of sometimes of fantasy art, how it's kind of cut out this brutality, this awareness of what happens. So I wanted to convey that in this particular image for a book cover. Probably not a great successful book cover in a way that many readers want to see, or the heroics. But for me, again, the sensibility was what I wanted to project forward in my work. And this, again, broke new ground for me. And also, wasn't just a book cover. I turned it into a giant triptych. So this is 4 feet by 7 feet, the original painting. And then the full triptych is actually 14 feet wide by 4 feet tall. So it's gigantic. And here's a quick little, like you can scroll through here, just see the level of detail. And all of this, again, was from a commission for a front cover, not even a wraparound. It wasn't even commissioned as a wraparound book cover. It was for a front cover of a, like a $4,000 or $5,000 commission job for a fantasy novel. And I just ran with it. I just said I needed to do something else. I wanted to do something else. And that's, all this other stuff cascaded from that choice. Again, this sits in my portfolio to this day. Clients have never been frustrated when you over deliver. They never do, as long as you meet the deadline. So that's just it. As I met the deadline on this, I didn't have the whole painting finished. I had the front cover finished, and then I finished the rest on my own free time. And all the triptych that evolved later was all on my own time as well. So yeah, clients never complain as long as you meet the deadline. Yeah. So getting on, again, I'm just blasting you guys with information here, but I'm trying to get through all the slides very quickly. So one of the other aspects of artistic development is going into museums, visiting the Prado. Again, this is in the late 90s when I was starting to get these ideas about changing my intent, seeing amazing paintings, triptychs. Yeah, speaking of triptychs, right? This is the triptych idea coming out of the Renaissance, Hieronymus Bosch's work, looking at all the multi-figured, right? The complexity of characters and elements in these pieces. And like I said, I want to do that. Like I want to do that kind of painting. But as a commercial artist, I don't have any free time for my own projects, mostly. So what do? I throw it into, I take, busy town, which is what I like to joke at. Like, if you know Richard Scarry, these are like busy town in purgatory. And I grew up reading Richard Scarry's Busy Town, which is probably why, like, what do people do all day? And like, these are awesome. That's probably why I love multi-figured narrations, because it's like, this is me. And so I go, okay, I want to do Busy Town for science fiction. And, this is Busy Town. I was already doing it in high school. I didn't recognize it, but now looking back, right? This is, what do X-Men do all day? Well, they fight Sentinels, right? This is Busy Town in the X-Men world in comics. So this is Busy Town for a book cover commission. Again, for Irene Gallo, because Irene gave me a really freedom at Tor Books to explore things. And this is crazy, right? This is a typical book cover wraparound. Again, I could have gotten away with simplicity, but then I just throw myself into this because I want a portfolio piece. And I want things, I want something that breaks new ground for me artistically and conceptually and keeps my clients happy. So, so one of the questions about how do I find clients, basically this is back when I had my agent. So my agent was feeding me work, and actually he didn't need to do much work in that sense. My delivery of these kind of jobs just kept commissions coming from places like Tor and Berkeley, Warner Books, Avon, Simon and Schuster. So yeah, so this is it. But to keep me satisfied in this painting is my wife is over here on the very left. We just had gotten married, so I put two rings kind of intertwined there. My name is in lights, as you guys see, and my brother has a bar down here, Michael Samuels, and I'm down here on the lower subway platform in the green shirt in the middle, down there, exchanging some information with a character. So again, these are ways to keep personal excitement through the piece because of the amount of labor required to execute this, and the energy. And again, the lack of, the pay wasn't a lot there. So I had to like recoup or justify it in some ways. And again, so I did it again. I did it for other projects, just turning on that passion, finding, carving out extra time somehow out of another commission or another project, and making sure I just had portfolio pieces coming out of some of these exercises. So again, not every job can be like this. Yeah, you just can't turn on your passion to like 100% all the time. So there's ups and downs. I want to clarify, like, I have ups and downs through my career with these things, but the assessment, the aspect of spectrum, allowing me to assess what's going on, is part of this. So someone's asking, like on this painting here, this took 1 week for the drawing. Because I still did like a hand-drawn pencil drawing. And then approximately 3 weeks for the oil painting rendering. So again, it's a 4-week project that could have been done in 1 week if I just had taken shortcuts, right? So, again, this one's a little faster. I think I did this one in 3 weeks, cutting down some time. But the other thing, again, moving on, some of the other personal aesthetics that I love were abstraction. And how do I put a Kandinsky into science fiction? Well, you just throw a lot of circles in it. So this is a science fiction wraparound, and I just said, okay, how many circles could I just justify in a composition? And it was all inspired by Kandinsky. So I kept literally drawing circles and changing sizes and transformations so that everything in here, just about everything, even inside the window of the apartment that these people are in, are circled structures. From the architecture to the chairs to the tables, everything just goes like crazy to the circle, the nth degree with circles. And it's all about abstraction. And so that's me, again, projecting my personal, had nothing to do, the book mentioned nothing about circles, nothing at all. And it's me projecting, this is like 90% me and 10% of the book. Yep. And it's other abstraction, Kazimir Malevich, Russian, it's kind of minimalist. So it's just simple, the basic supremacist composition here. But I love the idea, like just that simple dark shape against a splash of light and the movement and the slight twisting of that red implying movement. And so I do that, like tapping into like really strong abstract design, these massive dark shapes, cutting out negative spaces and like little slivers of space. So these, again, even though they're fairly realistic in their structure, they are hyper abstracted in their gestation, the development. And I do, someone's mentioning about reading books. I do read the entire novels on these. So it's like crazy. Like something like I'm throwing out 99% of the novel to get to this point. And so this is actually a scene from the moment. There's a bunch of investigators and over a murder that occurs, but nothing like this is described. The author is not describing this moment. So this is me projecting the whole city view and world view into this moment. And then the little narrative structure of that little sliver of rectangle here is what keeps the client satisfied. Yeah, someone's saying, does my client expect this kind of quality every time? It's like, yeah, they would hope for it, but I think they're realistic and realize I'm not going to be able to deliver every time. But these ended up not taking that much extra time. In the end, they just, that motivation is what I'm talking about. It's like getting there to turn on. Here's that supremacist composition, dark square rectangle against the white background. Obviously, I embellish it, but that's the compositional graphic design motivation, light on dark. So all the skin of the characters are very pale and pasty where I can, and that contrast to the darkness, and then the lightness of the foam and the water. And that's what keeps me thinking and sparking the creative impulses to be excited over the next projects. So then again, this happened after, again, a handful of years into my professional career. And so like moving on to the last phase here of the lecture of where I turn. So what I've talked about a lot is the injection of personal interest into commercial work and how that fulfilled me artistically. But what I'm going to show you now very quickly are 4 areas of my personal projects of drawing, Lord of the Rings, my love of science fiction, space exploration, robots, and landscape painting that have all brought fruitful commercial work to my palette, to my table these days. So I'm going to rip really fast through this because we're running. I want to stay open for some more questions. Drawing Gandalf. This happened in the like you can see 2002, so like 20 years ago. I started doing drawings for conventions just for my own personal interest and to satisfy the needs for like having something other than oil paintings to sell. And so I just turned to Lord of the Rings, and I just started doing these time and time again. And so after about 10 years of doing a bunch of these, a publisher approached me with all the Middle-earth work that I had been doing, again, as a fan, no commercial product really, that I just had an abundance of these things. I literally got dozens of them and dozens. And that was enough to fulfill the structure of creating an art book all about Middle-earth, all about my visions of Middle-earth. And that's, so that was published about 11 years ago. And it's again, opened up more venues, more commissions, private commissions that have all blossomed out from Lord of the Rings. And so this is where I'm just turning on my own personal interests, revisiting it again and again over the years, and it turns into then a very fruitful project, because now these drawings have inspired commissions from that art directors see. And now here, this is all for the book Uprooted by Naomi Novik. And I did 32 interior illustrations, all with this kind of red pencil chalk approach on toned paper. And so this is a commercial commission that led basically all the way back to those kind of simple convention drawings of portraits for Lord of the Rings. So quickly, again, another interest, personally, I grew up watching the space shuttle take off, the moon landings. I was a little young for the moon landings, but watching the space shuttle and the space program, in the skies, watching it pass overhead, you could see the little pinpoint of light passing. So I had a gallery project where I could make some astronaut paintings for literally, again, not a commercial, but just for a gallery show. The painting actually wasn't even shown in the gallery because it was too big. This is like 8 feet by 7 feet in scale. And I was like, oh, what a waste. Like, I did all of this labor and it's not even being shown in the gallery. But what happened is I put it in my portfolio. It got on the cover of Spectrum. And then I received a commission from the United Nations to do stamps, space stamps, 18 different space stamps of this triptych montage. And so that opened up commercially. Like, again, it was directly correlated to that astronaut painting that I had done for the Fine Art Show. And that led also then to commissions from the US Postal Service for Alan Shepard and the Messenger mission stamps, and also which then led to me doing Ursula K. Le Guin's portrait, which was actually done about 10 years ago, and it just came out now. So it was, again, really, like that all birthed from me doing those astronaut paintings for myself. And now I do, private commissions with astronauts celebrating what I love about space exploration. And yeah, so it's just this ongoing, extra area I can tap into if I need to. I don't build my own canvases. I hire people to build them. So I just stretch canvas on the wall, staple it, paint it, and then I re-stretch it when I'm ready to send off the work. So I'd actually paint flat without a flexible background on that. And a painting like this takes about, this is about a 3-week painting or so, 3 to 4 weeks. So it's a fairly large, this is 60 inches by 40 inches in scale. And the last phase here, landscape painting. Oh no, second to last phase, landscapes. Doing, I love the Hudson River School, which then fed into trying to do Hudson River School for Middle-earth for the fellowship. And this was a private commission, which then led to more private commissions. So another landscape painting with Gondolin and the eagles and Huron and Hor being flown in here. This is the scale. This is me actually in front of the painting. So you can get an idea of the scale and the detail. And again, these were great commissions. They were far beyond what a commercial client could pay. So I could throw myself into them, put the detail in. And so I've done a bunch of these paintings and I'm planning to do some more. Again, all spawned from my passion over landscape painting, but twisting it for fantasy and science fiction. And this is my latest one, which I will have at a LuxCon coming up here in another couple weeks. in Reading, Pennsylvania. So I'll be showing that here. And lastly, robots. So I love painting robots, science fiction. Obviously I've got a deep root with them with Star Wars. And so I didn't receive many commissions for them in my later career because science fiction robots, they're the transformation of like what we are, like the idea of an android is more look like an organic version of us rather than some kind of like robot, like a C-3PO. But I took this quote from Sir Isaac Newton and generated this little painting about 10 years ago for a gallery show. And I loved it. It was successful. And that spurred me on to make more robot paintings because, again, I was not getting them as a science fiction and fantasy illustrator. So they just weren't out there in the genre anymore. And so I just started doing these paintings. And now they've opened, again, up private commissions now that people want these robots, I call them empathetic robots. And I just keep doing, at my own pace with my own integrity, my own ideas. But those actually turn into sometimes commercial commissions because an art director sees my robots, loves them, and then hires me to do a book cover based on one of my robots. So this is a way, again, an example of how the commercial work gets influenced by can be influenced by your passions, your personal interests. And these are my last few here. My daughter, Cecilia, posing with me as the robot. And there's another couple here. Again, I love doing tattooing. So here's another example of finding an excuse to use tattoos inside a piece. Sorry, I'm ripping through these real fast. These are all on my website if anyone wants to really investigate them a little further. And my other daughter, Naomi, here posing for one of the other robot pieces here as well. So that's basically it. I'll just kind of scroll through some last images of imagery of why I project into this. And it's the last phase of this is that which makes us human. And it's about taking those personal interests that I talk about, those narrative interests, and merging them with a lot of commercial jobs. But I love finding domestic moments, moments where your hero is more vulnerable. And that's been influenced by art history many times. And I've absorbed that. I've really been able to analyze like what the artwork that I enjoy looking at in museums and in galleries, and understanding what it is about that work, and then reprojecting that into my commercial work and private commissions. So to be honest, I don't really have a wall between commercial and private work. It's all the same. And I've learned now that my best work comes out of sometimes an amalgam of that, of working with other people's ideas and my own personal interest, and seeing what comes out of that aspect. Someone asked about in the early stages of my career, did you ever have to struggle with turning down commissions because I wasn't passionate about the subject? And yeah, actually, I did turn down some things that weren't appropriate for me. Again, I had a luxury of almost always having some other artwork that was available to me to execute. So I had alternatives. So I could say no to projects. It wasn't going to help my portfolio. They were money. It was some of them were really good money, but they weren't things that I wanted to paint, things that I wanted to celebrate. And so again, I've just got to show you a few of these paintings that I love about these. I call them, again, kind of sensitive moments where the heroes are a little more vulnerable. And you'll see eventually a bunch of my paintings that have been influenced by these kind of works. I love this one by Dean Cornwell. This is, I think it's titled "Confession to Murder is Never Easy," something like that. And I love, like, who's confessing? Is it the woman confessing? Right? And the guy is all distraught, right? While she's cool, calculated, she's the killer. Or is it the guy, right? Like, who? I think it's better that she's the one confessing, right? But these moments, these are great emotional moments. So another, let's see, how do you keep your interests together, like a notebook, sketchbooks? Yes. While I'm working in my sketchbooks, if I come up like one of the robot paintings, one of the really nice robot paintings came out of a sketch of two figures consoling the death of a child. And I ended up turning them into robots rather than being two different farmers, which I originally envisioned. But that came out of my rough ideas in sketchbooks. And actually almost everything I do has sketches. I'm always working from initial rough ideas, playing around with ideas in my sketchbook, and then and I have a wall in my studio of concepts, of ideas that I have. And what I do is I go to that wall whenever I have a new commercial commission. I go to that wall and I see what I can pull from that wall to join with my commercial work. So I'm literally like, I have like the source, and if I can find a marriage, some aspect of balance, then I can bring that personal and motivate me into the commercial work as well. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. Any good books or resources about painting you'd recommend? I really don't. There are so many ways of oil painting. Really, it's about being able to take liberties and experiment and challenges. So certainly getting somebody to show you how to paint, being hands-on. Oil painting is very hands-on. So taking a class somehow, getting someone else to show you a little bit about the materials is very helpful. But there's actually, that's the way I've learned. I haven't really learned through studying videos or taking online, kind of classes and interactions. About hands-on processes of oil painting. See, do you think painting realistically is important to get into fantasy illustration? Not anymore. The diversity and the pluralistic approach towards narration now is so broad in the genre that anything goes. So you don't actually, even oil painting is kind of very much a dinosaur in terms of illustration needs in the commercial marketplace. And there's a place for it. Just like we have dinosaurs all around us, they're birds now, right? They're just changed. And so like there's a place for them, but it's not like they don't dominate the world anymore. Like oil painting used to dominate the world. So the asteroid of digital Photoshop illustration slammed in around 25 years ago and forever transformed the landscape of commercial illustration after that. So yeah, that's but yeah, I love storytelling. I love drawing, and you can do that on any kind of platform, traditional media, digital media. Like when I teach classes, I don't talk about my technique. I talk about storytelling. I talk about composition. So I celebrate those things that motivated me, and hopefully can motivate other people to pursue those aspects of narration. Let's see. One of the questions, a tough one. Do you ever fall out of love with your work within the process? Yes, there are a couple years there that I hated coming into the studio. And it was tough because it was commercial work. I just needed to do the jobs, and it wasn't easy. It was difficult, but I just made sure as a professional, I executed them, delivered them on time. And then again, found ways and tapped back into, when I had a chance to breathe, a chance to think, I would turn back onto those passions and find a way to re-inject myself back into the work. So I think that's what you're not seeing. Like I'm not showing you are many of those jobs, right? That were those failures, that were those in-between moments that got me through, but didn't fulfill me artistically. So that's a whole nother lecture, a whole nother way of looking at my body of work. But again, so these are these vulnerable moments. Frodo, nearly dead. The fellowship may be broken because of his death, after getting stabbed by the orc in Moria. So this is my book cover. This is the cover for Lord of the Rings. Not an epic battle, not some grand, Helm's Deep or the Black Gate and Gandalf and the Balrog. It's a very fragile moment where the hero has fallen and like things are maybe broken. That's what I love. I love tapping into these moments. Here's another nearly dead person. This is one of my most awarded paintings for Irene Gallo as well. Again, these are all these things are book covers. Here's a private commission. This is Uther and Arthur. So Uther Pendragon and the young Arthur, who actually happens to be my daughter Cecilia. So because with small children you can't tell the gender. So it was great. Cecilia posed for Arthur Pendragon here. But again, this is a great moment of a knight who's heroic, but he's heroic through his fatherliness, his embrace and love and passion over his child. So again, great ways. Here we've got the taming of Smeagol with Frodo and Sam, and kind of almost like a Judas kiss of Frodo, like signifying the end, in a way, the end all savior of Middle Earth when Frodo, Gollum takes the ring and stumbles and dies, clutching it as he falls into Mount Doom. So this, again, these kind of wonderful, for me, interesting moments of merging together saint paintings, martyrdom of saints from the Renaissance with modern aesthetic of Lord of the Rings. Again, like my love of painting flesh and the human figure and gesture and hands. There's my hands. Look how many hands, every hand I could possibly get in here, right? Showing that, having fun with it. And a calendar image for Game of Thrones. I thought great way to like throw up a calendar, like really testosterone driven TV show Game of Thrones was, and bam, like have the December calendar, here's, Santa Claus, Tyrion, with all the red and the celebration of Santa here with a nude. And so I wanted to be able to also celebrate the idea of the little person body being beautiful, right? Having subtlety and beauty to it, and convey that and make it a sensual painting. And so I love, like, that's the challenge, like throwing a total curveball at my client out of my own expectations and seeing what comes out. And so this is one of my favorite paintings out of that series of 12. And I still have it. It's hanging in my studio to this day. And tapping back into my passions with superheroes for a private commission for Captain America. Do I do master studies? Someone's asking, I think, about master studies. Yes, I did. I've done a few through the years, but they are. I've only done a couple because I think you really get masterful by doing things, not mimicking and copying other people. So I copied to understand technical choices, a Rembrandt and a Peter Paul Rubens. So I've actually only done two master copies, and that gave me enough knowledge about some of their technique to then implement and exercise that in my own work. So that's basically it. That'll leave you. This is the final slide here. Joan of Arc, again, celebrating my love of hands and storytelling, narration, kind of a visual detachment from the earthly world. And this is actually as a DVD. This is a how-to DVD. So you can see this entire painting being created with one of my videos. It's available both as a digital download and actually a DVD. So thank you all for coming by today. I hope I'm sorry, there's so many questions like coming by here, but I just couldn't get to them. I appreciate you all stopping by, and enjoy the rest of Lightbox Expo. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. All right, JB, think we're done.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. Sorry, that was quite Whew.
No, that was
Nonstop.
great. Thank you so much.
Okay, Jay, have a good day now. Thank you.
You too. Bye.
Bye.